Hi everyone, I'm Rosemary. It's been a while since I've done something geared to adults. I've been doing mostly videos for children's pieces. So this is my latest piece that I have done. It's a shell lantern from Gare. And what makes this a little unique is the pearl finish that I put over the outside. And I was happy to see that it's still available for purchase because it was a jar that I had in the house for a very long time. So I thought it looked really, really pretty. I don't know if you could really see the effect of it, but it looked really pretty on the shells. So I went ahead and I started base coating this piece. Now I did the inside in the seafoam. You could do the inside of whatever color you would like, but I use these beachy colors from Gare, and right now they're not in production, but I still have some of them left. It's light teal, it's salmon, and I used Mako Hushed Violet, and then I used white and pearl. And gray, and use Mako's gray. They're medium gray, but you can use any line of paint, but that's what I use. And I base coated the entire inside in the seafoam. I didn't really do the whole inside on this one, I'm cheating. And I started to do the outside on this one, and I'm going to continue to do it. Now, I found that the paint was a little thick, so I just put a little drop of water in my brush, because it doesn't matter if you have complete coverage as far as seeing through the color. You just don't want to have any white spots showing. But you are going to be putting a lot of other colors on top of the gray, so it doesn't have to be a very solid coverage. We just don't want white spots. So a lot of people, oh, there goes my phone. A lot of people do ask me if I do the inside with these little inner areas. Do I do them with the color on the inside or the color on the outside? I find it's better to do them in the gray, and then you could go back with a smaller brush and get in there. Like I have a smaller brush here, and you can go back and do a better job than I'm doing and get all the inside done. I'm sorry about the phone. Usually I silence it, and I forgot. So I don't want to stop the video and start all over again. So we'll just hope that the message they leave is appropriate. I'm sure it will be. And it's probably spam calls, or robocalls, or whatever they're called. So anyway, I had started this before the video, and I have a coat of gray on there, but you do a better job. You make sure that all the insides of these little cutouts have the gray in them. Okay, and you can go back and do that with a small brush, but just make sure there's no white spots. If the white spots are in the crevices, when you dry brush across the top, across the grain, that will show, because we're putting our color on the raised area. So if the raised area has a white spot, it's not that big a deal, but if your white spots are in these little grooves, then you will see that. And if you miss them and you wash your brush, and you can always go back and you could paint it in. Okay, like I see a little one here. If you look at it from all different angles, upside down, okay? But you have the time to do that. I'm just gonna kind of work a little faster so I could show you how to do this. It's a cute, simple piece, and I laid out some of my colors in my palette. So what I'm going to do is use the 3 colors on the shells on the first 2 rows. So if you do lilac, salmon, and light teal, then you repeat it. Yeah, let's see, salmon. Actually, they're opposite each other. So if you do the salmon here, then the salmon is directly opposited on the other side. See, here and here. And then the next one you do another color, the light teal I used, it's here and here opposite each other. And then when you do the lilac, they're opposite each other. So you have, just on this top row, you have 6 shells. And I did 3 colors twice. Okay, now you could do whatever you want to do, but I'll just show you the way I did it. So when you dry brush, and I always go over this in my videos, I'll start with the salmon, and you put a little bit in your brush, and you take it out. Now, a lot of people, what they do is they do this. Now, you didn't get the paint out of both sides of the brush. You actually want to palette the color into all the hairs of the brush. So I twist my brush around and make sure that it's evenly dispersed in the hairs of the brush. And then you lay your brush, not completely flat, but kind of on an angle, not point in. If you work point in, you're going to go in the crevices. And if you notice, you can still see my crevices are gray in most of the areas. Okay, so you're going to go lay your brush almost flat, but not quite flat. and go against the grain with a very light hand, and always work from your outer edge to the center. So I'm not going to go right across. I'm going to do from this edge in and from this edge in, and for top down and bottom up. But try to stay against the grain, which means you're doing the opposite way of your crevices. Now your first coat is very, very light, and I leave that. I'm going to load it again. And every time I load, I don't just do this. I lay it down, I hold my paper towel, and I work it into the hairs of the brush. It's very important that you don't have a lot of paint in the brush. If your color is going on wet, you have too much paint in the brush. So now I'm going to do opposite that one. So let's go do this one here. And again, against the grain, you can see what I'm doing. Go in from that way, come in from the left, come in from the right toward the center so that you don't get it on all the other shells. Come in from the edge on this side, come in from the edge on this side. If a little bit gets onto the other shells, right now we're going to be putting other colors over them, so it doesn't really matter. Now, when because I have the salmon in the brush, I'm going to be doing the next row. I'll do a salmon below, let's see, you just have to space them because then the next row is exactly the same way. So if I do the salmon, the two salmons opposite each other on this row, I'll do the same thing here. So we'll do, let's see, the salmon will be here, here, and here, okay? Just have to figure it out. Now I'm only doing one coat on each to begin with. And you don't have to do exactly my colors. I did a couple of classes at libraries with these, and everybody had different ideas, and they reversed colors, and they did them in different ways. Doesn't really matter. There's no right or wrong. It's just, I want to show you how to dry brush from always from your edge in, top down. Just try not to fill in the crevices. So now, since I have the 4 done, I'm going to start all over again and go back, because there's no more salmon on the piece, on my piece anyway. And I'm going to go back, I'm going to redo all the ones that I just did. So I'll start with the first one, and if you notice, see that little bit I just did on the top? Your second coat makes a big difference. So I even like to do 3 coats when I do it. Okay, so now look at the difference in that one versus that one. Okay, so 2 coats look pretty good, but every time I do a shell, I put some more paint in my brush. That's the one. I'll do the other one here. I see a lot of little white spots that I missed on this one, and if I was going to keep this for myself, which I'll probably burn the color off, because I have so many pieces where I have 2 samples, because I always do a sample, and then when I do a video, I have to do another one. So what I've been doing is burning it off in the kiln, just throwing the piece back in the kiln again. So I'm not going to worry too much about my little white spots, but you should make sure if you have little white spots, go back with a small brush and fill them in, you know, if they're in the crevices. Now, if you paint these shells and it's wet when it's going on, you're going to be filling in your crevices. You see how my gray still shows in those crevices? So that's the reason for dry brushing, is you want to make sure that you keep your crevices in a different color so it looks almost like an antiquing. Okay, I'm going to do this one. I think I did this one already. So let's go back and do this one, and then I think I'll just be about finished with the salmon. Now, I don't wash my brush in between colors. I have enough dry brushing brushes that I could use one brush for each color, but when I'm teaching a class, I don't have a lot of brushes that I can give everybody 3 and 4 and 5 dry brushes. When I'm working myself, I can, and if you're working yourself, you can also. So what I do is I tell them you clean out the previous color with the next color that you put in your brush, and I'll show you what I mean in a minute. I just want to make sure that I have enough of the seafoam. I do. Now, I'm going to take out as much as I can. Okay, and never bang your brush down. That's how the hairs spread open, especially with a dry brushing brush. These brushes wear away so fast. So I'm going to go to the seafoam next. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of the seafoam in my brush and work it out. And then do it again, work it out. And then on the 3rd time, I probably have enough out of the brush of the salmon that I have just the proper amount in there. Okay, so now I'm going to go to... Okay, so it's the next one. It's this one. It's next to the salmon, the one on the top. So I'm going to do that. And you see how fast the salmon got out of my brush? Now the seafoam is in my brush. And then I'm going to do the one opposite it on the other side. And then on these the bottom ones, it's below the salmon. You know, my color just went on a little wet, and that's because I did this. I didn't stop and hold the paper towel and make sure I really got a lot of it out of the brush. So when the color goes on and it's wet, if you try to do successive coats over that, sometimes it lifts the color if the previous color is too wet. And of course, the more color you put in the brush, the wetter the brush gets also, because there is moisture, there's water in the paints. See how pretty that looks? All right, it's just very simple. I'm going over some of these a second time. I think I missed one on the next row, which I'm going to have to do, but let's go do this one, and this one, and where did I miss one? I have one here, I have to do one here. They're all opposite each other. So the top row, they're opposite each other, and the bottom row, they're opposite each other. So here is the seafoam, and then the seafoam will be here on the other side, so they're opposite each other. This is the second row. And I have a little bit of the salmon on this, but the seafoam is covering it right up on this shell. Oh, and then I go back and just do them a quick second time. I don't even have to dip in more paint, because there's enough paint in the brush, even though you think there isn't. There's enough paint in that brush to give you a second coat. Okay, so now I did a second coat. Now, my paper keeps moving, I'm going to do the lilac, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'm using Mako's Hushed Violet. I'm going to pick up a little bit in the brush, a little more than I want in the brush, and use that to clean out the light teal. I do it 2 or 3 times till the color looks good on the paper towel, which it does already. Okay, so now I'm going to be doing the last ones that are remaining, the shells. And each one that you do now, you have to be a little bit neater because you don't want it to get onto the other shells. So I know now that it's the last ones left in the second row and the ones left in the top row, because I used only 3 colors. Now, if you have paints, you can use whatever you want. I always tell everybody when I'm doing a class, you're the artist. This is my interpretation, so I'm just showing you how I did it. Okay. And then this one down here, and then I'll just go over them a second time. Go back to the top, because it really makes such a difference on the second time around. The colors pop. And this is the 4th one. So there's 4 of each color, 2 in the top row and 2 in the second row. Now, on the 3rd row and the 4th row, I didn't really want to repeat all the colors. You can. I don't know how many shells are down here. 3, 4, 5, 6 again. So you could also do colors on those, but I did them all in white. And then the last row, I did all in the seafoam. So I'm going to do the last row, and then the very last row, I went back to the white again. Your choice. I'm going to be doing, instead of trying to put white in the brush right now, I'm going to go back to the seafoam. I should have done that before I cleaned my brush. Oops, I put the wrong color in my brush. Seafoam, that's what I'm doing, right? And I'm going to be doing this whole row, the row above the very bottom one. I'm going to do this whole row in the seafoam color. It's called light teal. So I did all of them. And I have little arches of color on them, but we'll do those after I do this. So this row, every shell I did in the same color. And again, remember to come in from the one side to the center and come in from this side to the center, because if you go like this, you might get it on your other shells. So always come from the left in and the right in. That helps you avoid getting it on the area next to it. And I try to make sure I get the tops also. Then I use the point. I have some nice dry brushing brushes here. These are really nice. These are White Doves. I don't even know who makes them, but these are pretty decent brushes. And they must be Royal. And again, I do them twice. Just the first coat, as long as you don't put it on heavy, is very, very light. Like I said, if you put it on and it looks wet to you, you have too much paint in the brush. I mean, look at this. I'm doing 3 shells without even reloading again. Because now the brush is getting more moist the more color you put in it, like I said before, because the water is in the paint. And each one that I do, I'm pressing a little harder because now I have to try to get the paint out of the brush. I did 4 shells without even redipping. And now for the second coat, I'll put a little bit more in my brush. I'll go back and do it a second time. I'm not going to be perfect because I just want you to see how to do it, and you can go over them as many times as you want until they pop. But you know, you can do 4 and 5 coats with dry brushing. People are always anxious to achieve the color with one application, and you don't want to. You want to put it on very dry. I was told once that true dry brushing, you actually see a powder form, which I'm not seeing right now because I have a little bit of moisture in the brush. One more time. Okay. See that row? So now I'm going to go to the white, and I'm going to use a different brush for the white because I happen to have it. If you have to wash your brush, I would wait till the next day till that brush is really dry before you try to use it to dry brush, because a wet brush does not dry brush. If I'm teaching a class, I can actually go over to someone and I'll go to use their brush to show them something, and I could tell, I said, you washed your brush. I could tell immediately, even though it may look dry. It makes a big difference. You must have a very dry brush. All right, so now we're going to be doing the white. So put a little bit of white in this brush. And we're going to do the white on the bottom row. And that too, 2 coats. Now this one I put on a little too heavy, and I'm going to show you because it filled in my crevices. All right, you see I filled in all my crevices. I put that on a little too heavy, too much paint in the brush. And this one went on better. But as I go around, it'll be even better, which means less paint, much better. Look, every shell now I can do with the amount of paint that I have in the brush. You won't fill in your crevices if you just make sure you get all the paint out of the brush. Look, I did every one on the bottom, and that's so much better than the first one I did. It's like a blob. All right, so I'm going to put just a drop more, and now go around the second time. Where was I? It doesn't really matter. See, again, too much paint in the brush. Go back, take it out, and make sure you flatten your brush as much as you can. Use the side of your brush. Never point in, use the side of your brush. That made such a difference. That's the first one I did, which is a blob. Things don't always come out perfect the first time I do them either, or any teacher. It's a lot of practice and a lot of patience. Okay, so that's the bottom row. Now I'm going to do exactly the same thing on the big shells. Okay, see, that's a little wet when I was putting that one on, a little wet. Very light hand, and always start out with a very light hand. Don't hold your brush too tight. If you hold it tight, that means you're pressing down too hard, you're going to get too much paint out of the brush. You hold it tight, lightly, until you get the feel of how much paint is in the brush. And if you get lines, just kind of angle them. Sometimes when you go across like this and like this, you wind up with lines. Go on an angle. Don't ever go straight down or you'll fill in your crevices, but kind of exit, crisscross it. And that will help you get rid of the lines. And don't just go from one to the other. Look at what you're getting. Okay. Now I know I don't have much in the brush, so I am sweeping. Now I don't keep the brush on the surface. My sweeping is picking up and down, but I do it fast. but I'm actually picking the brush up off the surface. It might not look it, but I am. If you keep the brush on the surface, you're going to be wiggling into the crevices, and you don't want to do that. See, when there's nothing in the brush, that gives you the perfect dry brushing. All right, so now when I load again, I'm going to run into the same issue. Too much paint in the brush, so I'm really going to try to take it out this time. Start out with a very light hand because there's definitely more paint in the brush. You could see it. All right, I'm only going to do one coat on these so that I can show you how to do other areas, but I suggest you do 2 coats. And now I don't have anything in the brush, so it's much better. You always think you have everything out of the brush, and you really don't. It makes such a difference when there's nothing in the brush. Now, with this, you can also very lightly to tone down your other colors. When there's nothing in the brush, I wouldn't put any white in your brush. I just take what's in my brush and I dust over the colors very, very, very lightly. I mean, I'm pressing hard because I know I don't have any paint in the brush. And that gives them a subdued look. Tones them down a little bit, your colors, and it depends what colors you use. Okay? So now, with the white, I did these little arches, little half circles toward the top of all shells on the top row. And then on the seafoam shells on the second row up from the bottom. So you put a little bit of white in your brush again. Now really take it all out. And just use the tip and try to almost, don't make a line, like curve it down. You see what I just did? Okay, I don't know if you can see it while I'm doing it. I'll try. That means I have to work upside down. I come up to the top more and then go down. Because when I was doing the class, a lot of people had them straight across. So I'm trying to do like an arch. See that? Okay. And they don't all have to be all exactly the same. And it depends on how hard you press when you do them. Now I need a little bit more of the paint. Where are we? Yeah, I'm going to have just a little bit more paint in the brush. I can use just the very tip. And I would do them twice. I'm going to do them once, but I would go over it twice so the color pops. I'm losing my voice. And I'll do 1 or 2 of them twice so you could see the difference. Okay, that's all of them once. But if you do it a second time, okay, now that salmon one is a second time. Look at the difference. The second time makes a big difference. I'll do 3 of them so that you could see. That's a second coat on these 3. These 3. This one, and this one. But these are only 1 coat. So I would go over them a second time. And I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom ones. And I start like down in the corner here and come up. Not quite to the tippy top, but more to the top, and then curve down to where the opening is. So I start on the opening, I go up to the top and come back to the opening. Okay. And that's what you do on those. I'll do a couple more. Where are we? I did that one. Okay, so again, start in the corner where the cutout is. Work up to the top, but not to the tippy top. You're going to stay about 1/4 of an inch off the top. If you start where the cutout is, aim your brush up toward the top. Stay about 1/4 of an inch off the top. Okay. And then we're going to be doing the same exact thing with the seafoam color, with the light teal, as it's called. I'm going to do that on the white shells. You could do it on the top ones and the bottom ones. I only did it on the top ones, but your piece, you can do whatever you'd like. Go over them a second time. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so there we go. See them now? You can see them a lot better. This one I did a second time. So now I'm going to go back to the seafoam, which I needed just to drop more, and put the seafoam in the brush again. Now, because I had the white in the brush, the seafoam is going to be very light, so I'm going to do it twice just to get some of that white out of the brush. And I'm going to be doing a seafoam arch. And again, maybe start from the middle of the opening, come toward the top so that you get a half moon kind of effect. See that? And that's only one coat. Each coat you do will be more vivid. It's going to go around on all of the white ones. And my white isn't as white as it should be. If I was you, I would do a couple of coats of the white. Okay, so I'm just going to do it once. I'll go back and do it a second time so you can see how it looks with a second coat. Okay, so now there's a second coat on that one, and this one is only a first coat. See the difference? Okay. Now, if you want, you could put some down here. I didn't. All right, so that's pretty much, oh, yeah, how the shell is done. I was looking at this one. I didn't do these other ones over here on the other side. Okay, so that's it for the dry brushing. Make sure when you do this piece that you get your gray or your seafoam color or whatever color you use. On the inside, one of the colors has to come to the top. I did the gray along this edge. I brought the color on the inside all the way up, and then I did the gray on the little quarter of an inch, eighth of an inch on the inside there. Now, the pretty part of this, the part that makes it so nice, is the pearl. And you can buy pearl in Michael's. I happen to use an old Mako Softies that I have, but I have recently purchased more Mako Softy water-based acrylic pearls. This one is Oyster. So this you just paint on. You don't dry brush this on. So I have a very soft brush I'm using for this. And you're going to really pull it out because you don't want your piece to be white. Excuse me, it's almost transparent. And it just gives it, can you see the little glow that it's giving it already? I kind of do each shell individually. And I do put it on the gray area too. Now, what I did on here that I didn't do on this one is I pounced a little bit of white in between the shells on the very top where you have background showing. This one I just left in the gray, so you can do it either way. But the pearl makes the whole thing. Now, can you see the difference in the pearl and no pearl? It just gives it like a satin glow. And you should still seal it. I mean, it is an acrylic paint. I don't know if it's a sealer or not. Use a sealer for added durability. So yeah, you still need either a spray or a paint-on sealer on the piece. But that's all you have to do is just put a thin coat of pearl over the whole piece. And that's it, okay? So I'm not gonna finish the whole piece because you get the idea. Make sure you wash your brushes out now. The brushes have to go in water and be washed. I have people who, when I had my store, they would come back a week later with dirty brushes and they'd say, you told me not to wash my brush. And I'm like, not while you're painting with it, but you have to wash your brush when you're finished. Okay, so this is the pearl lantern. Do not leave a candle in here unattended. It's always safer to use a battery operated candle or the fairy lights. The fairy lights are great in here. And I brought over a couple of other pieces to show you that I poured. And I'm going to be teaching some library classes with these, but this is getting ready for fall. These are my pumpkin birdhouses. These are clay magic molds. So we did those. And then, let's see, those over there. And this one is a Gare piece. And this is my gnome planter. So I glazed the insides, and we're going to put little succulents in there, and these are little stencils we did on there. And remember, I've said before, everything that I do, I can't do too intricately because it has to be able to be done in 2 hours in a library class. I don't know how they're going to get through these two in 2 hours, but we're going to hope. We're going to hope. I usually have them base coat everything in one color first. I mean, this you can't, but these were both base coated in a dark brown first. See the brown on the bottom? All right, and that this way, when they put the colors over it, they don't have to butt colors up against each other and be perfect with lines and everything. So these are my fall pieces that I'll be doing. Okay, and this is the shell lantern that I did. And if you have any questions, just contact me here on YouTube. I would also appreciate if you can all subscribe to me on YouTube. And hopefully I'll be putting more up on YouTube for the coming up holidays. So thank you again. Enjoy the rest of your summer and stay well.